How a romance novel saved the galaxy by Ariana Darante. Chapter 16, Bandamir Part 3. Holman used his time waiting for the backup his Mandalore had promised wisely. Maril had forwarded everything the true Mandalorians had on Off-World and Bandamir. Off-World's organization was strange to Holdan's practiced eye. The Hutts should have been at the top of the pecking order or answering to even higher-ranked Hutts in Hutt space. Instead, there was a conspicuous gap at the top of the company. Someone was in charge and trying to hide who they were. He took a transport out to the agricultural facility where Obi-Wan had been. The scientists and workers claimed to have seen nothing. Si Tremba was very apologetic. Holdan felt bad about how short he had been with young Arconin, and assured him that it wasn't his fault Obi-Wan had been taken. Then he headed for the nearest town. Off-World was crawling all over the planet, so it was no surprise he found some of their employees in the cantinas. Liberal drink buying and some sabak hands got him the information he needed. Many of Off-World's workers and miners were little more than slaves under a different name. They were indebted to the company and required to work off that debt, while also relying on the company for all their shelter, food, and supplies. Some of them seemed aware they could never work enough to pay off their debt, while others optimistically expected to succeed despite the odds. The important thing Holdan learned, though, was that because they weren't technically slaves, they didn't have slave chips or collars. He very much doubted anyone would be able to hold a Jetica like Obi-Wan without them. Did Off-World operate prisons? He asked his new drinking buddies. No, you put someone up high up in Off-World and it's off to the deep sea mines, one of them said. Some of them laughed as if the woman had told a joke, but Holdan could see fear in some of the miners' eyes. By the end of the night, he had more details. Those sent to the deep sea mines signed a 5-year contract, but the death rate was sickeningly high, with only 1 in 10 making it to a second year, much less 5. The miners wore slave collars with bombs inside them. Their controls were somewhere on the mainland in case of a revolt. Kark, either Off-World, were drugging Obiga and stashing him somewhere, or he was being held in a deep-sea mine with a bomb around his neck to keep him in control. Neither option was good. He took a late transport back to Bandor, the capital city. He'd get some sleep, then start figuring out where the bomb controls were on the mainland. The Verde coming should arrive around that time, and they'd either help him storm Off-World's headquarters or take over a deep-sea mining platform. Whatever it took to get Obiga back safe. La! Shouted Klata, the leader of the Arconin Mining Corporation. She was across the courtyard of the temporary quarters he was living in. Holdan looked at her, then did a double-take at the person behind her. It was a Jedi. He hurried over to her, eyes fixed on the Jedi. She was a short young woman with blonde hair. Dark lips and sharp-pointed ears hinted at something non-human in her ancestry. Unlike Jin's dark brown and beige robes, hers were such a light color they were nearly white. Holden La, meet Jedi Master Fei, said Klata. Well met, Holden La, said Fei with an impish smile. The Force told me I was to come here to flee the slaves, and that I would have Mandalorians with me when I did. Can you truly tell what anyone is thinking? Asked Nared. The thought was a bit terrifying, and not just because he'd been lusting after the Jedi this entire time. There are some Jedi whose skill lies in the mental arts, and can indeed read the minds of those around them. But most Jedi are more like empaths. We sense emotions and feelings, though even those we shield ourselves from, both out of politeness, and to keep ourselves from being overwhelmed. So you can tell what I'm feeling right now. If I focus, yes, said Hiam. He reached out and placed a hand on the side of Nared's bougie, tugging him a little closer. The beskar in your helm muffles the Force. Nared leaned in even more so that their foreheads were touching in a Keldame kiss. It was not enough. Nared wanted to be closer. He backed up a step to pull off the bougie. Hiam smiled at him. What am I thinking now? Taunted Nared. Hiam's smile turned sharp. The same thing I am. He stepped forward. There was a hand on the back of Nared's neck. Their lips met.